John Holland burst onto the scene as a leading man at the end of the silent era and successfully transitioned to starring in the Talkies. But in 1932, he retired. Why? Join me as I investigate. John Holland was born as James Holland in 1899 in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I can't find much information about his early life except that his cousin was architect Clifford Holland, who designed the Holland Tunnel. John began acting as an extra in Hollywood in the mid-1920s, and in 1926, he made his credited debut in Summer Bachelors at Fox. Interestingly, he was initially credited as Clifford Holland. According to an interview, John said that he told a casting director about his cousin in a phone conversation, and the director mistakenly credited John as Clifford. Therefore, he was credited as Clifford on the screen from 1926 to 1927. Summer Bachelors was a comedy starring Madge Bellamy that premiered in December of 1926. In it, John played Martin Cole. The film appears to have done well, and early in 1927, Fox promoted him to a leading man and starred him in two pictures, again still credited as Clifford Holland. The first was the comedy Rich But Honest, which also starred new star Nancy Nash. Publicity in moving picture world advertised Clifford as Alan Dwan's new discovery, who just signed a 5-year contract with Fox. The film also appears to have done well, and the entire cast got great mentions in both moving picture world and Variety. Next, John as Clifford still starred in the drama The Secret Studio with Olive Borden. This film also appears to have done well, but despite 2 hits and publicity and talk of a 5-year contract, John as Clifford vanished from the screen for 2 years. In 1929, he returned to the screen as leading man again, this time credited as John Holland. His first film was She Goes to War at United Artists, which also starred Eleanor Boardman, Al St. John, Edmund Burns, and Alma Rubens. While the beginning of the picture had a talky musical sequence with Alma, Holland's scenes were mostly silent with synchronized sound effects. It appears to have done well. John then returned to Fox and starred in Black Magic, a South Seas fantasy drama with synchronized sound effects that also starred Josephine Dunn and Dorothy Jordan. Lastly, in 1929, John moved to Columbia to star with Ruth Taylor, Buster Collier, and Jobina Ralston in his first full-length talkie, The College Coquette. While it got mixed reviews overall, mostly because so many college comedies flooded theaters in the late 20s, John was most critically praised for his work as Coach Harvey Porter, particularly in Motion Picture News, which wrote, "John Holland gives the best performance that has turned out by the entire cast." John entered 1930 still at Columbia, starring with Virginia Valley in Guilty. He then returned to United Artists to star as Bob Wade opposite Lupe Velez in Hell Harbor. Another South Seas drama, this one appears to have done well and got John a nice mention in the New York Times. He closed out the year starring with Una Merkel in the melodrama The Eyes of the World, also at United Artists. It also appears to have done well. As successful as John appears to have been as a leading man in 1930, it was his last year as a leading man at major A-Picture studios. In 1931, he first moved to Paramount to support Carole Lombard, Kay Francis, and William Powell in Ladies' Man. In one hilarious scene, he and Carole drunkenly attempt to make Francis and Powell jealous. John then moved to Poverty Row to star in 4 B-movies later in 1931, giving excellent performances in each. First, he starred with Alice Day and Barbara Bedford in The Lady from Nowhere at Chesterfield. Next, he starred as Police Captain Bill Houston in Defenders of the Law, a nice crime drama at Continental. After that, back at Chesterfield, he starred with a who's who of silent talkie stars, including Barbara Kent, Lillian Rich, and Creighton Hale, plus a young Walter Brennan, in the great backstage murder mystery Grief Street. John played reporter Jim Ryan, who is out to solve the murder of a philandering Broadway star. Closing out in 1931, he moved to Tiffany to star with another group of silent talkie stars, including Bessie Love, Conway Turrell, Lena Basquette, and Virginia Lee Corbin in Morals for Women. Blaine, the small town man who comes to the big city to find his fiancée Helen, played by Love. John got a nice mention in Variety for his work. As successful a year as 1931 had been for John at Poverty Row Studios as a leading man, John only made one movie in 1932, which proved to be his final film. He supported Marina Sullivan and Betty Compson in The Silver Lining, a prison drama. After its completion, John retired and for all intents and purposes vanished from Hollywood. Even after much digging, I still could not find any other information about what John did for the rest of his life. According to IMDb and Wikipedia, he passed away in 1971 at the age of 72, but I can't really find any confirmation of where these two sites got that information. I could not find any other further sources about John. Part of this confusion is that there was another actor named John Holland who was active on film and then television from 1937 to 1986, including appearing in My Fair Lady. There was also a singer named Clifford Holland who was a member of the Delta Rhythm Boys and the Four Knights. Neither of these two performers should be confused with this John Holland. So we are left with the question, why did John Holland retire and disappear after only a few years in the talkies? I honestly can't really say. While he slipped from A Pictures to B Pictures in 1931, he was still a leading man for the entire year. It is very strange that he still wasn't a leading man in 1932, but instead played a small part before calling it quits. My only guess is that John chose to leave the business and move on to something else. If you have any information about John Holland, please let me know. He was a very talented and capable actor who could perform well in several different genres, and he should be much more well known today than he is. Please check out one of his films. You can find a number of John's films on YouTube. She Goes to War, Hell Harbor, Ladies' Man, Defenders of the Law, Grief Street, Morals for Women, and The Silver Lining. I must thank my sources for this episode. American Silent Horror, Science Fiction, and Fantasy Feature Films by John T. Soister, Henry Nicolella, and Steve Joyce, and Archive.org for their digitization of moving picture world, motion picture news, and variety. Please like and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I investigate the silent talkie career of Phillips Holmes. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.